Hey guys, how are you? Nice to see you, and I hope you're all well. Thanks for letting me share this, Erica. Hope you've all had a good evening, and I know what you're thinking. She's back. She's wearing a vegan t-shirt and she's going to try and convert us. I'm not. I'm just going to speak to you about something that I believe we all have in common, and that is that we all love animals. Like, of course, we're all in the veterinary industry, and that's why we choose to embark on this career. It's probably not the hours or the money that is obviously swaying you into this line of work, but I think we all can agree that we've become sort of skilled and knowledgeable and equipped with the expertise that we need to make animals' lives better. So what I'm going to ask today is whether or not our actions reflect on how we feel. I'm not accusing, there's no accusations here. I'm just aware that sometimes we get caught up in the way things are, and we don't often think about whether or not that's the way we'd like to continue doing them. The reason that I'm asking vets and nurses is because I know that we are compassionate, we are caring, and we are dedicated. So the question that I'm going to ask is, why do we restrict this compassion to only those animals that are presented within the clinic? So I often ask, why are some animals' lives worth more than others? Why in a building, and a building in particular that we love and we treat some animals, can we be treating them in one room and then eating them in another? Walk from the staff room into the consult room or the surgery room, and there has two contrasting things going on to two different types of animals. Again, I'm not accusing. Like, I just ask how have we got to this? How is this okay? Like, I know that I could call any one of you back from your lunch break if I said that there was a cat that had been hit by a car and had got a fractured leg that we needed to attend to. You'd be out there straight away. But to go back into the lunchroom and then eat a chicken's leg, I just find that we've just become really disassociated with that. We forget that there was a body on this chicken's leg. There was a little mind, a little person with feelings and wanted to live, but yet we just see it as a product. But let's also consider the cost in this as well. Like, some animals have so much money spent on them, like thousands, yet others we're only willing to spend like loose change, and that's deemed fast food. I had a lady not that long ago who brought in a wild bird, and this wild bird had scalped itself. Its eyes were so dry it wouldn't have been able to see it, and it was emaciated. And I explained to her that unfortunately we wouldn't be able to treat this bird. Its injuries were too severe. And she got really mad at me. Like, she said that you're supposed to be treating animals, you're supposed to be helping them, not killing them. Now, I'd just like to point out, this lady had a McDonald's carton in her hand at the time. So I ask, what's enabled us to view them so differently? Like, we strive to make things better for these animals. We go on these courses and congresses to make things better, but yet we're eating a meaty buffet. And I just want to acknowledge at this point that I did this for years. I didn't question it. So I want to share a story, and that's about a bird of prey that we had brought into the clinic. The bird of prey was being collected by the rescue centre. We also had some baby chicks brought in at the same time. These chicks were tiny, like, they were see-through tiny. They were unlikely going to survive. The rescue centre suggested that we kept the chicks and that they were going to feed them to the bird of prey. At that point, somebody in the clinic suggested, well, can't they just go and get some chicken? And we euthanize the chicks. And I get it. I get that thought comes from a place of compassion, and that they didn't want to see the chicks being eaten, and that the chicken in the shop is no longer a chicken. It's no longer of the avian species. It's now a product. But when you think about it, we've just doubled the death toll. That bird of prey still needs to eat, and we've euthanized the chicks, and we've also bought chicken. So we're motivated to care, but if we can't see it, I think we're all guilty of forgetting. And if we can't see it, does it mean that we don't have to care? Like we all see firsthand how scared these animals they are in the waiting room, in the consult room. We see, well, we know firsthand like about the anal glands and the scratches and the bites. We know how bored they get after a few days of hospitalisation, and we all feel compelled to help. We provide them with pain relief, we provide them with enrichment, clean bedding, chance to go outside, supportive therapy, fell away, comfort. But yet, do we think about how scared these animals are when they're faced with live export? Do we think about all the smells and sights and experiences they have, and a life of solitary confinement quite often? These aren't the kind of things that we would like for the patients that we encounter to experience. And I think it's hard to be compassionate when we can't see it. So, euthanasia. I think it is one of the kindest things we can do to sometimes end an animal's life. I think we're lucky enough to be able to relieve the suffering. And I would just like to compare this to humane slaughter. I ask myself whether or not there can be such a thing as humane slaughter. So I've just looked up the definition. Now, I'm not going to show you footage or even explain to you the horrendous things that happen in an abattoir. I'm sure many of you can probably think about it, and quite often, well, many of us have experienced work experience in these kinds of places anyway. But when you think about the definition of humane, do you think that's something that happens in these abattoirs? Like I said before, we're lucky enough to be able to use euthanasia to end suffering. But I can't help but think that on the flip side, purchasing animal products creates suffering. Like I said, I'm not here to judge, and some of you still may feel that some animals are purely products or food, but there may be a few of you who have considered that perhaps compassion can spread a bit further, and that your actions don't actually always correlate with your views. But there is good news. Change isn't that hard. And it's now even easier to find vegan food. I'm back in the UK now after 2 years, and was really pleasantly surprised of how many options there are, and just from purely a shift in the demand. And it's not all leaves and grains. There are some really fantastic options. I mean, there's a few here of us checking out the local joints in Edinburgh. So 2 final things before I leave you. And the first thing is that if you do decide to reduce your meat consumption, then you've got to remember that it isn't meat. It doesn't taste the same, and you can't compare it. But for some of you, it will just mean that it just aligns with your views and sit a bit more comfortably with you when you are having a meal. And secondly, I just want to acknowledge that change can be challenging. Making yourself think differently. I'm still learning, and if you are interested in revisiting a few of your choices or challenging anything that I've said today, then I'm more than happy to revisit this and would love to hear from you. But the reason that I've wanted to have this conversation with you, aimed particularly at vets or nurses, people in the veterinary industry, is, do you love animals or just pets? And it's a toughie. But thanks for listening. Anyway, enjoy your evening.